Hi, Ominous. Thanks for coming on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. I don't know too much about beatboxing. Could you share a little bit about yourself, about beatboxing? Actually, when I heard you, that was the first time I ever heard it live.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, vocal percussion, beatboxing, however you want to call it. I've been doing it for about 25 years, roughly. I started when I was 12. I got it when I heard my brother, believe it or not, he's autistic, and he would make sounds when we'd watch Much Music or MTV. And so he would make scratching sounds, and I couldn't believe how realistic he was towards the sound, and it made me kind of wonder, like, I wonder if I can do any of this, because I always had an interest in doing background voices, and I was heavily involved in drama and the fine arts even at that age. So I got more into it, and I learned more about beatboxing, and that there was a platform for it, and that there were a lot of people kind of getting into it, and there was some famous people like Dougie Fresh and Rozelle from the Roots, and others that were just kind of blowing my mind at the time, and some things I picked up on quite normally. And so it was all about being organic and making a beat without having all the instruments around.
Mm-hmm. So, what made you decide to pursue it?
I figured when I was starting, I started doing it along with music, and I was working kind of in like with a metronome, trying to make sure I was on point and with the rhythm. And some things I picked up on right away, and I got an audience of my friends, and they told me that they gave me positive feedback. And make a long story short, it kind of foreshadowed me into further getting into it. I started doing it at all ages shows. I got involved in some on actually Much Music when I was 16. They had it.
Wow.
They had it at Quincy's,
Mm-hmm.
which no longer exists now, but they were showcasing a lot of great artists from the city at the time, and they gave me a go, and I kind of went along with it. And ever since then, there was always a few opportunities. And then after 18, I did some shows with a couple friends, and one of my friends pursued it further, and I've been doing shows and hosting and festivals. Things like Shambhala and other festivals around Sync Festival, Fozzy Fest, and getting a chance to kind of perform with some of the or open up for some of these artists that I used to listen to. It's been really cool. So it gave me kind of like the ambition to keep doing it further.
What a great accomplishment.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any favorite shows that you've done in the past?
Well, that I've done. I mean, I would have to say, like, there's a few artists that I really like. But I found out more about them before the show, like kind of prior to, like Dub Effects, for instance. I really enjoyed doing his shows because he was really live, and I did that one right after Chambois. So what they did was right after that, we all kind of came up with Article. They were at the time doing the tour busing, and so we were all together, and I got to meet him and Flower Fairy at the time when he was working with her. And ever since then, I've liked the other beatboxers that I've worked with. I worked with Rozelle, who was I mean, I used to, back like in 2000, it was one of those things where everybody heard of him, and he was breaking out like as an individual artist. And so if you were doing Rozelle stuff, people were like, "Whoa, that's really cool." And
Mm-hmm.
and then I kind of figured, well, I don't want to be like a beatboxer can sometimes sound like, if you play the game telephone and it comes out differently, you want to kind of sound like it yourself without sounding like another beatboxer. So I decided to kind of break free and do my own kind of, without taking away from how awesome he is, but doing my own kind of styles and working on that. And when I got to do a show with him, it was really, really kind of like a dream come true. I got to host the show. It was they had a whole bunch of other beatboxers from the city too, and then that led to just more cool shows. There was a few other artists that I really liked. Like I liked Inspect a Deck from Wu Tang. I really liked doing what else? There's a couple. If I were to really think about, like, there was Empathy or Apathy, self-titled. That was a really cool show. I really liked doing. There was a Blackalicious performance that kind of inspired me, and so that was really, really cool. And yeah, there's been a whole bunch, but just in general, I think the beatboxers really kind of inspire me. And Scratch, he's another member of the Roots as well. So
Okay, I could see where you could get inspiration from that.
yeah,
So, how do you find your own signature style?
It's I think it's kind of just like listening to what's out there and trying to do something that's within that kind of foundation, but still being a little bit different and offering a new like say different transitions, different forms of variations to kind of like go back and forth, but offering like I try to work on a kind of sounds that although maybe familiar, maybe do a little tweak on it like anyone else would do, or like a remix of something. I found that doing a lot more, it depends. Like some days I would be incorporated to do certain sounds. Others I couldn't. Like say if I woke up and my throat was sore or something like that, but it would enable me to do other sounds that I couldn't do if my throat wasn't sore. So sometimes I'd use that to my advantage, and also just on the microphone too, like having a little fun with that, with all the distorted ways that you can tweak it. I found that it was a lot of fun discovering new noises, and then just kind of throwing that in there so that people would be like, oh, I never heard that, or make it even stronger. So, it's kind of like working like with an instrument by just doing different notes.
Do you have to find you're recording yourself to capture those sounds again?
Sometimes it's I find that, yeah, there's a window for if I'm doing the sounds, like sometimes if depending on, I mean, it could be like whatever you eat or drink. Sometimes it can be you can only get a certain amount out of that sound before you can't really do it for the rest of the day. That was just me. And other times I could do certain sounds all day and it wouldn't bother me. Or there'd be other times where if I was doing it for a long period of time, like for instance, if there were certain shows, if the volume was high where everybody was talking and yelling, you don't realize that your voice is trying to go above that. So you could be damaging your voice for that day without realizing it. Like when you're at a festival and it's loud, but you don't realize it. And you always wonder when you get back why your voice is all scratchy. And, I started learning to kind of over time, just kind of conserve certain sounds, know when the sounds are available to me, I suppose, and then release them at their best point. And recording that, usually I'd get involved after a day of good rest and not too much water, because sometimes water can part you even more. So I would just kind of just have a fair amount, stop for a bit, not eat too much, because I found like if I'm drinking pop sometimes, it's funny because when I do a certain bass sound, if I get the hiccups, then I can't, I'll be like,
right.
So I have to make,
that.
Yeah. And I didn't at the time either. So it would kind of suck when I was doing it. So I'd have to work with what else I could do in that time if I did have the hiccups and they just weren't going away. So
yeah, you'd have to try to mitigate that.
Yeah, and over time I found a bunch of sounds. Like I said, if I had like sore throat or even if I was getting sick, not COVID, I would like sometimes, because I use sounds that I incorporate from my throat, nasal, and diaphragm. So sometimes if the nose was blocked, well, hey, I can do better sounds with the throat, or sometimes it would just modify it where it's like, again, there's only sounds I can make when I'm sick and they sound all right to me, really good. But then when I'm not sick, I never get those sounds. So I'll throw that in there sometimes, and then I'll let the recorder or sometimes the sound guy know about that, and so I'll get them done. And also, the mic also too. It depends on the sensitivity of how the mic is set. So
very interesting. So how do you practice beatboxing, or how do you just maintain and step up your game?
Well, there is times where I do listen to other beatboxers to kind of just see what's going on, but I don't want it to distort what I do and just hear a beatboxer and try to imitate the same sound. I found when I was sometimes when there's a lot of beatboxers, if they hear a sound, they'll try to do it right on the spot. They did that a lot in the Beatbox Championships. I went to the first one in 2010, and there were certain sounds where it's just like when everyone heard it, they're before they're up and performing and stuff, sometimes they're trying to desperately practice it, myself included. And I just find that it's what gets me to do it. Listening to some music, really good music, hearing a nice melody, a nice tone. I find that really can really embrace me to kind of do something maybe similar. It also gets me on my notes. Sometimes if you're doing like a band and say a whole bunch of trumpets and there's one off trumpet, they'll do one note all at the same time so that you can get to that note yourself. I can do that when I'm listening to music. So then, if I need to improve, my inner melody, I suppose, it helps with that. So I'll listen to some music right before a show to pump me up, get that energy like music always does for people. And yeah, I think those things kind of encourage me. And also good feedback, positive feedback. It's always nice when someone says, hey, yes, that sounds really cool. And then it just makes you want to continue doing that format of whatever they're saying is good, And then if someone says, sometimes when someone does give you the constructive criticism, which does happen, there's a lot of, competitive, ways where you can actually get better, then it makes you it builds me up as well. Not necessarily brings me down. It actually, as constructive criticism is concerned, it really does help me to work on something, to sharpen it, or to, again, tweak with it, tighten it up.
Definitely. That's what helps you grow as an artist.
Yeah. So.
Can you tell us about these championships that you've been in? I'm curious. I've never been to a beatboxing championship before.
Well, I can only say I've been to the very first one. It's been hard because I work and balance things. But I've been doing a lot of shows in Calgary. But that was a great experience. It was the very first beatbox championship, Canadian Beatbox Championships, and I did fairly well. And there was a lot of cool people, and they knew who I was through my YouTube videos at the time, which was surprising because I didn't know it was making that kind of a mark. And I would often send out different videos out there was like one for the world champion to be a wild card. They brought the person who won, and she was really good, and everyone was there listening to that. And my video submitted, they were telling me, was the number one video. I was like, whoa, that's really cool. And although I didn't win the championships, I was really happy to where I placed and doing really well, that it got some recognition. And then doing more shows, I started to get a lot more, I might have been biased in certain genres back then, getting into more EDM at that time, but now I see myself a little bit more rounded, just kind of bouncing back and forth and doing a few things. But I was younger then. I mean, I was, I'm a little bit older now, and so having that, instead of just kind of just diving in the one thing because it may be hot, it's like, like a stock or something like that. No, I'm just going to just do what I've learned throughout the whole way, because sometimes certain classic things are what, can just rebound, and it just brings people, that attention again. It's retrospectively speaking. And so, I mean, it was really a cool experience. It made me want to just keep going. And ever since then, and there was some King of the Dot battles too. That was a lot of fun. There was some cool opportunities with that. And, but more, the way I look at myself is I'm more of a performance-wise beatboxer. So the more I'm progressive, so the more I do it, the more I let out. So when they give you only a minute to kind of showcase something, sometimes I look back on, I'm like, oh, I should have threw this in. Oh, I should have done that. But now it's just like, it would give me a good set in 5, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour, even if I'm working with certain other collabs or whatever like that. The more I do it, the more I kind of let it out. And so that's how I like to be a performance style beatboxer. But the opportunity came again. I've had enough money to maybe go back out there and do it again. I might do a little return. We'll see what happens.
Nice. So is there a lot of improvisation that's involved when it comes to beatboxing, or do you practice a set and then plan it out and perform it? I
think it's a little bit of both. I mean, I was a pretty forgetful type person, short-term wise, but now that's changing. I've been, I remember I do a lot of, it's kind of a mix. So whenever I'm working on a beat, there'll be some kind of foundation of what I was working on, but then it'll sound slightly different. So if I'm doing like a recording or 7 for that matter, they'll each sound slightly different than the last. So it's one of those things where it kind of is kind of a freestyle style, so to speak.
That makes sense.
Of
course.
But I mean, certain things are concrete. There'll be like certain melodies or beats that I do that I'm like, okay, I like this one, and I'll try to remember it. Sometimes I'll forget it, but if I don't, then I'll do that, and then I'll do a transition into something more freestyle related, because something just comes into my mind, and it'll be from something like maybe 15 years ago that I haven't done for the last forever, and all of a sudden I come up and I do it, and it pops in my mind. I'm like, oh yeah, I'll do that. And then other times I'll forget about that, and then something else from like maybe 2 years ago that I did, so because there's a lot of material to look back on, and a lot of source material, I suppose, that I can really think to, but it also depends on that particular time. If I got enough sleep, if I if I eat properly and all that kind of stuff, then my mind is, like the cognitive perspective is there, and that's important.
Yes. Do you find it takes a lot of concentration? Like, there's so many factors that you have to consider physically, and I'm sure mentally as well. Yeah.
The way I see it is, well, a lot of my performances, I have my eyes closed because I'm trying to focus really and kind of be in that little zone, I suppose. But a lot of performances, I can open my eyes and I'm fine. But I sometimes have to retrace some information and not be distracted in that kind of sense. But sometimes just, if you're on a stage and you're getting some really cool feedback, and you're asking everybody to give you high fives. And when I say beat, you say box. And then, you know, sometimes it'll give me, that in itself will give me some source material to remember, or flashbacks, I suppose. And then I can do that. But usually, like, it'd be funny because I'd be performing sometimes and I'm having my eyes closed, and then I open my eyes and I'm in a totally different spot. It's like a hacky sack session. You know, you can't stay in the same place. And because of that, you know, it is good for me to have that concentration, I suppose, but it's not as much as it used to be, so I can kind of be more aware of my surroundings.
Yeah, I can imagine how, like, as a vocalist, sometimes I'm listening to myself, but I already know the lyrics, and so I never really get too distracted unless I have a really close-up performance and I see micro expressions. Maybe sometimes my mind wanders a bit. Yeah. How do you find, like, your thought process is like when you're performing?
It depends on, I guess, maybe the performance. I mean, you know, whether it's even just 3 people or 5,000 or a couple, like 20, 40, it just depends on how nervous I might be. I always seem to be nervous before the show, but then after I feel like it's right as rain, you know, and so if I'm nervous, I'm just kind of worried about, you know, my material. And because of that, it's like when you're cramming for, you know, for a test, you know, sometimes you'll work all night, but then you get nervous or something, and then all that's all for naught, you know. And sometimes that does happen. Other times, you know, I'm really comfortable in my zone, and you know, I just feel that you know, when that does happen, then I try to take a couple breaths. I do some breathing, you know, count to 10, hold for 10, release for 10, all that kind of stuff. And the more I get comfortable in my zone, the more I'm just like, oh, you know, like, this is what I do. I love this. You know, this is like second nature to me. So sometimes I can handle it very well, but there have been times where I've been nervous, and that could also, you know, that can depend on the sound guy too. Sometimes they don't pick up certain sounds. It's hard because I can understand, like, I fluctuate with sound. I fluctuate with the dynamics of, you know, doing bass and other things too. You know, like, I mean, these things, you know, they got to keep up too. But sometimes, you know, the sound guy will kind of mess up the acoustics. It's happened before. You know, they can make you or break you. And so I'm always worried, okay, well, I got to work with the sounds that I do know that sound good. Again, it's almost like being sick, like we were talking about. Sometimes I have to just work with what he already set it on, or she set it on. And then if I know that certain sounds are good, I'll just keep going with that sound, you know, and I'm always worried that's going to happen. So, but a lot of times it's pretty good.
I can understand that. You're so talented and you have so much experience. Where do you want to take your beatboxing?
Well, thank you. I would, well, you know, it's always been something that has been around when nothing else is. And I really do want to take it further, but I understand that it's kind of a novelty. You know, in hip hop, it's the fifth hidden element. I even had a cool old group with me, and my buddy KG, who does True Rhythm, we had it was called Hidden Elements, where we mixed the producer and me together. And I like to work on future collaborations with people. Like I said, I might drop by and say what's up to the beatbox competition again, you know, if I ever have enough to go out there and do that kind of thing and have the right proper sponsorship, and or just be able to just do it on my own terms or whatever. But I would like to continue doing shows and hosting, because hosting has just been something I just love doing. I love getting the audience up and at 'em, as they say. And, you know, it's just been a fun event, and I've been taking in a lot of, you know, I guess constructive ways to be better at that and to keep people's attention. A lot of times if someone forgets, you know, they have like their USB, they forgot at home, while they go get it, they're like, can you just go up there and just keep the audience busy for a bit or whatever. I want to do that on a larger scale. I wouldn't mind opening up for, you know, I've opened up for some big artists and stuff. I have about 50 or 100, I don't know. But
wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, but it's been like, you know, at the end of the day, you end up going back home and it feels great. But I mean, it's like, I want to take this further. I want to do some tours, and I would love to kind of just open up, like, you know, not be the primary, you know, person for the show, but be like an opener, or be like a helper to make someone else's show really good, and maybe make a living off it. That'd be kind of cool, you know. Yeah. But I don't hold my breath on it, and but it's never made me jaded. It's never made me stop. I do it all the time because I don't need an audience. I could just, you know, think of something and just do it. When I'm at work or something, I hear sounds and I'll be like, oh, incorporate it into music. Mm-hmm. Or, you know, if I'm down, it actually helps with my heart rate and physical aspect of it, believe it or not. Like, I mean, I can almost swear it's helped me from not getting a heart attack a couple times, probably, due to stress or some situation going on or whatever. But because it keeps the blood flowing, it's a way of life. It's more than just music to me. So I would like to take it further because it's a form of identity.
Of course. Yeah. It's interesting how beatboxing has been part of other parts of your life. And it's, I can definitely see how you want to take it in the future.
Yeah, it seems to, I don't know, when I'm in a project doing something else, it always seems to be a cool little highlight. Then when people find out about it, it's a little bonus. And so it kind of adds to the flavor of personality, I suppose. And but to do that all the time would be just great, because the more I do it, of course, the more comfortable I would be with it. And it would be something that I wouldn't have to stress doing anything else of, like doing all the other things that life has to offer, plus the beatboxing, and hoping I can, make it all work within a schedule, but to do it full time.
Yeah, definitely.
That would be excellent.
It would be. Yeah. Do you have a dream venue that you would like to perform at?
Carnegie Hall. No. Well, yeah, maybe. No, just some, I guess, Coachella one day. Maybe Burning Man. I'd like to do Shambhala again. That'd be great. I've done 2010, 2011. I have some videos on there on YouTube. And I wouldn't mind, just going to places in the States or Europe, traveling and doing shows. Like, you're always a little more respected outside of your own hometown, they say. And I know that's true. It's kind of weird. But a lot of people here have given support too. So I can't really just say that, 100%. But it is kind of a cool cultural experience too, to see where people are on what they like about beatboxing. And when I hear that someone likes me from Ireland or something like that, they've heard my music or they're trying to find me, it's just a surprise out of nowhere. I'm just like, oh, that's really cool, so it keeps me going. But yeah, a big performance like that would be kind of nice. Or to do something even, like say like at Alberta College of Art Jubilee on their big stage, like something like that, like just something where there's a large audience where they get a chance to kind of just hear the ominous touch. I think that'd be kind of cool. But
Oh, definitely. That would be so cool.
Yeah.
Do you have a message for your followers or your fans?
Yeah, just keep doing what they do. And, like I used to be very competitious, but now I really encourage other people to if they like beatboxing or do whatever they do, I don't, I try to really like that, because it builds up in them as much as it builds up in me. And anyone who's been a supporter, I just like to thank them, because it's, without them, I wouldn't really be where I am as far as continuing the music. And whether I'm on a stage or not, I mean, I keep beatboxing not just for myself, but because other people want to hear something else or something new. So it keeps me on my toes.
For sure. Well, I personally really appreciate it. Very talented, and I can tell you're very passionate about it. So thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
No problem.